What is up, gamers? Today I want to talk to you guys about Marvel's Avengers. Here as part of our Shackcast, episode 5, Marvel's Avengers. This will be video and, of course, audio on the um, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. I think I'll pull the audio down. We'll talk over the footage here. That way, be struggling. But yeah, this is just kind of some of their early footage of A-Day here, and I'll air some other footage of gameplay as needed. But really, I just kind of wanted to talk about how I'm feeling about this game. There's a lot to unpack and understand with this game. We've been studying it, we've been theorizing about it, and then finally we've had these war tables come out in June and July where the developers have sat down with us and sort of explained, hey, here's how the game works, here's, what things play like, here's what you can expect. Like, we're finally seeing the pieces come together, whereas here we're just like, what is this game? Is it just a Batman style fighting game? And we're starting to learn, no, this is sort of an open, you got these open worlds that you can go in, and then you sort of have almost this Destiny style of character builds and designs and collecting loot and crafting loot and going back to a place that's similar to Destiny's tower. You're going back. Oh my gosh, it just looks so cool. Anyway, going. It just, you can't say Thor doesn't look cool smashing stuff right there. But yeah, we're going back to our headquarters and getting missions there and crafting stuff, and there's some of that in the footage here. But just the fact that really what's hit me the hardest was, usually we have to wait around just for one game per hero. Whether it's Batman, it's Superman, even when Thor had his like movie-based game, and Iron Man had a couple movie-based games, we never got a Black Widow game. We had some Hulk games, and we had Ultimate Destruction, which is, the one that we base, that we hold all other Hulk games to that standard, and anything that ever features the Hulk, including this game, we're holding it to that very high standard. Captain America's even had his own game, the first Avenger, which was, for its time and for what it was, it was decent, but, it wasn't like mind blowing like, Batman Arkham Asylum was for, DC and just for the gaming industry at that time on, PS3 and 360 when that landed. It was just, there was nothing like it, and it just showed what we could do with superhero games. And so this is sort of the ultimate, getting you guys really hyped up now. This is sort of the ultimate team up, right? This is like, oh, this isn't just one hero game. Like, this is all the heroes. That's why it's called the Avengers. I don't know if you guys have been awake watching these Marvel movies for the past 10 years, figuring out what these guys are, the Avengers, guys and gals. But yeah, so that means, there's a lot here that they have to juggle, right? They're juggling, how do you make Thor playable? How do you make Iron Man work? How do you make Hulk stand out in that world? How do you make Black Widow keep up with these flying superhuman titans, So, that, in that sense, I was like, man, you guys really have your work cut out for you here. So, we're seeing this footage, and it looks too good to be true. It's very ambitious, and, some people saw this footage early on, said, oh man, this looks like it's too much on rails. It looks too scripted, too linear, not at all cool. And as we've finally seen more footage, we kind of understand that there's, sort of going to be these different challenge areas that we can do, and different open world settings we can go to, and quick missions that we can do. And obviously there's your story missions as well, that are obviously going to be more focused on a narrative than, maybe just fighting off waves or combat or objective focused stuff. So like I said, all this looks amazing, and it's going to make you want to, try out all the heroes and play as as your favorite hero, and try to have your own build. Your own Iron Man is going to be different than mine and the next guys and the next guy, and whoever else is playing, right? We're all going to have our own build of each of our characters, because there's just so many possibilities, right? There's the gauntlets that give you extra of this power or whatever, allows you to do more of this blast or modifies it in a certain way. And so you have that with all the gear pieces. Then you have your own cosmetic look, right? And everybody's going to be grinding to try to get their own. They want to get a specific look of Iron Man. I'm just using him as an example because he's on screen. But yeah, maybe you want to have Iron Man's armor from some specific comic or whatever, and so you're grinding to get that. And then you got your own build, and maybe you really like the repulsor blast, so you got to build based on that, rather than something based on his missiles or the chest thing or melee combat or whatever. Maybe you're focused more on the, whatever it may be. So really cool stuff. And so looking at that, and looking at the fact that they sort of want to do what it took years for Destiny, and I can't help but compare, because this seems very much in a similar genre of Anthem, Destiny, Division, Warframe, games as a service, games that want to continue telling a narrative in a world, which is what Destiny's barely started actually nailing, and starting to actually like realize. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, duh, we've been trying to be an RPG, an MMO online RPG, disguised as an FPS, but we've always had these things here, and we've been too scared to sort of admit, okay, we're more than that, and we just need to finally, take the blinders off and just realize that we can do so much with this unified world that we've created, and we can tell so many stories. Well, that's the same thing here. They can tell any Marvel story with all these characters. They can go into anything they want. They can make up their new stories. They do whatever they want. With of course, with Marvel's limitations, with their hands on the wheel too. But you can see so much room for growth in this world, and this is Crystal Dynamics' world of Marvel stuff. So they're free to iterate on the characters as they want. They're free to make them look however they want. People were kind of chapped about, oh, why does Captain America look this way? Why is he wearing this armor? Like, whatever it is, they're free to do that, and allow for their own creativity to shine, just the way the MCU creates its own look for the heroes in the movies. TV shows have their own looks for characters there. And then, of course, the comics, depending on the artist and the series, and who's writing and all this stuff, you might get totally different takes on, these familiar, beloved characters that we've known for years and years. So you get different looks, different takes, and all that stuff. And so ultimately, that's not a bad thing, because we just get a fresh take and a new look at our beloved characters, and maybe we get to play them in some of the familiar ways, but maybe we get to experience something new along the way. And the clap is killer that Hulk just did there. Just looks awesome, just looks fun, and oh my gosh, great. This looks like a great time. So this is meant to be sort of the tutorial level. That's, well, tutorial might not be the right word, but maybe an introduction, since A-Day is said to be the introduction of the game, and they're sort of wanting you to experience all of the characters here and give you a rundown. That way you can figure out who you want to be going forward. And then obviously probably going to be some missions where they're like, hey, we want you to be this one to tell a story with this character, progress the story or whatever it may be. So I'm a very big Captain America fan, as you can see by the t-shirt here. So the footage here just makes me go nuts. Like it looks so good, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. And I know that from the footage we've seen, things don't end well for him, as far as we know. And so yeah, looking at how he used the shield to block bullets, he's throwing it here. It's bouncing off guys. He called it back. He runs at this guy and starts, using combination of throws and hitting him with the shield. It really kind of reminds me of Batman, but in a very much a good way, because some Batman has some of the best, comic book fight, some of the best fighting just all together in a game. Um, and so just the way that he's using it to pull off combos and counterattacks and to be blocking. And we've talked about this at length in previous videos where I've sat here and paused and gone frame by frame and said, "Oh, this looks like he's using an ability," and then he kicks the shield after he throws it. He kicks it and knocks it off the walls again. And we're seeing obviously some enemies here challenging him. We're seeing some symbols of him having to counter and dodge. So obviously there's sort of this Batman thing where there's counterable attacks, and then there's like, oh no, this is not, that's unblockable. And then we see Cap using different abilities and just looking so star spangled awesome. I just can't wait for a chance to experience that. That's my most anticipated moment. Might just be this few minutes where you get hands on with Cap, which they said they're gonna let us play this in the beta, and then they're gonna have a bunch of Warzone, all these other missions, and they set up to, I believe, 20 and some Kamala Khan stuff to introduce her as well, because she's the one that's supposed to pull the Avengers back together after the events of A-Day. So yeah, we're seeing all the characters, and they've got a great cast of voice actors, right? You got Travis Willingham, you got Nolan North, you got Troy Baker. I mean, just it's amazing. They have a great cast, and I'm sure there's lots of people, other characters that may not have been revealed. But I mean, it's a great start as far as pulling from these incredible comic books and these familiar characters, and sort of pulling from famous video game voice actors and really letting them flex their skills here. Nolan North as Iron Man is just going to be ridiculous and fun. And I can already tell that the Thor impersonation, the Thor sort of voice is just that very Viking sounding voice is what I think of, the old timey like middle aged voice, and I kind of like that because it's what I enjoyed so much about, especially the first Thor movie, were just those moments where he was very unfamiliar with modern Earth, and he was very much talking like a Middle Earth type person, who is not used to all this technology and customs that we have here in America. So it was interesting watching those characters interact. And then here, obviously seeing how Black Widow fits in with this world, and how is she going to be an interesting character to play when you have, the super soldier Captain America. You've got, Tony Stark in his suit with the missiles and the lasers, and you got Hulk with the big muscles and the smashing and the throwing. How does she keep up? How do they make her fun to play? Well, they got the grapple gun. They've got, some guns. We've seen her wielding SMGs and stun batons, like a big bow staff. And, so the grapple hook being another ability. And so, our first thought was just sort of this horrible thought that we shouldn't have. But, we were like, oh, well, Crystal Dynamics, they made Tomb Raider. Maybe they just, gave her the Lara Croft moveset, and it's obviously not true. I mean, it's, you might be able to see that they've, learned things and applied things from Tomb Raider to this game, which is a good thing, because the Tomb Raider games, the trilogy from 2013 to now, has been absolutely incredible, and a great reinvention for the character of Lara Croft. It couldn't have been a better time for a reboot, and just to really tell a different story with the character, a darker, more grittier, real story about survival and struggle, and even a little bit of horror in there as well, with all the action, adventure, and suspense. So I mean, as you can see here, obviously she's a little more nimble than Lara Croft, so we can't really just say that they put in the dual pistols from the classic Tomb Raider and just called it a day. They've really outdone themselves with this game. And so, that's maybe one of the first snap judgments a lot of us might have thought when we first saw some Black Widow gameplay, or assumed that she would play a certain way. But it's just living out all your greatest fantasies from the movies and the comics and stuff. Anything you've wanted to do, it seems like a lot of that's happening on screen. Iron Man 2, you're seeing Black Widow jump around, you know, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu grabbing people with her legs and breaking their necks or whatever, and, you know, running up people and kicking them in the face and stuff like that. And so we're seeing some of the complexity of combat here, and a little bit about maybe how boss fights and stuff will work in the game. And of course, you're just seeing beautiful visuals and really smooth gameplay, lots of pretty effects, and how she's able to use the grapple during combat, and as we saw here in July, traversal, right? And so it'll be really exciting to get our hands on that as well. So seeing her fight Taskmaster is really cool, and he's very much a villain that sort of, imitates all the heroes, and he sort of, absorbs their powers mentally, sort of, he sort of studies these different characters, and he's got the shield like he's Captain America or something, and he's just sort of adapting to all the different heroes, and he learns how they fight. And now we see her going invisible, which is one of her other abilities, and she's got obviously the electricity on her bracers there. She's able to use that to her advantage. I mean, just looking at all the possibilities you're going to have with each of these characters in forms of combat and traversal is going to be really fun. And of course, the looks that you're going to be able to create, you're able to purchase certain cosmetic armor, and of course upgrade your own throughout the game. You'll be collecting materials and investing them in this machine to craft different armor, and then of course, depending on what you pre-order, you might have some armor sets to start the game with, and as you play we may unlock some stuff as well. But it's looking absolutely gorgeous, and I think it's, just from what we've seen, what they've teased, it's going to be a very meaningful story. It seems like it's really going to pull at our heartstrings a little bit. We got the death of Captain America, you got the Avengers that are all disheveled and torn apart, and, you got this young kid trying to, Kamala Khan trying to pull them all back together, and, she sees their best qualities of who they were and what they built, and, she says, hey, we need the Avengers. What's a world without them? And so yeah, you get to the dark and gritty world as they're showing here, near the end of A-Day footage. And so I just wonder where the story's going to go and how it's going to evolve. And because they talked about how Hawkeye is going to be their first post-launch character, I mean, and they've shown a little bit of that, and got us really excited. Even me being I'm admittedly not a Hawkeye fan, and by the time I saw the look and what they were basing the comic of, and even though I had never read that particular comic that they were talking about, I was obviously elated. I was ready to do this. So I'm gonna pull up another video. We'll just run the next set of footage here from the, I believe this is a June War table. But yeah, there's so much that I'm excited about and passionate about. I'm going to talk about that now. One thing I did earlier this year, and it's kind of unrelated to this, but I sat down and played Crackdown 3 on stream. And, we had played through some of the Batman games and replayed through them. And so, I'm just trying to get like my superhero feel. And so I like these games where you get to be real powerful, like in Crackdown. You can leap tall buildings in a single bound. You could shoot enemies with all the guns and rocket launchers and grenades and stealth camouflage, and you're able to punch enemies and throw cars and explosives and stuff. And so you're sort of able to live that superhero power trip, but obviously, in Crackdown, you're sort of a super cop, right? And so I'm looking to sort of fill this void. And Avengers is really kind of that game that I've wanted. And of course, I've always wanted it also from a DC standpoint. Obviously wanted better Superman games to come out. Always excited for more Batman. Just being a lover of all comics in general. You know, so there's no rivalry here. We're here to enjoy whatever content is thrown our way from all these comic companies that are making all this content, whether it's movie, TV shows, comic books, whatever it is, t-shirts. I'm here for it. I'm gonna buy them all. So we're looking at all this stuff, and it's just a genre of game that I really enjoy. So why do I play Destiny? I get to be a super powered warlock that throws really cool elemental grenades, and I get to heal the team. So I'm already used to sort of that team dynamic of my character fills a certain role. Maybe Thor's a tank, maybe Iron Man's a tank, maybe some other character has some healing stuff that they can throw down, little AoE that we can protect and defend that area and be healed in there, or just throwing up some sort of overshield, whatever it may be. Or just combining our powers in certain areas to buff damage, whatever this game will have. We're obviously used to some of these mechanics in other games, right? So I can't help but harken back to Destiny because I've probably invested thousands of hours into that game, playing as all the different classes. So yeah, this one they showed some trailers. They talked about MODOK, AIM, and then co-op in Warzone. So this is some really good footage here. If you haven't seen this already, and of course I'll link my previous videos where we've watched a lot of this footage and done breakdowns, and I paused the game and studied things frame by frame, looking at different combat things and just theorizing about, based on how I understand how games work and how the comics work and how the world works and the characters are, how I think things may play or how things go. Sometimes I've been right, sometimes, man, I might be just way off the mark. We won't really know until we get our hands on the game, which is actually going to be this week. I'm recording this August 2nd. We are going to have hands-on the PS4 beta this Friday, August 7th. So that's going to be it. Yeah, so I was talking more about superhero experiences. I've always enjoyed, even when the games are bad. Played all the bad Superman games. I've played even the mediocre ones, or the good ones, not the great ones. I don't know if there's been a great one, but there's been some okay ones. As I've noted in previous videos about Superman Returns, and talked a little bit about some other ones that might have been okay or kind of had some right ideas here. So what I'm hoping is that this is sort of the superhero game that I've been wanting to play and just really sink my teeth into as something that can be a regular game that I play. Much like, Destiny is something that I always come back to. Even when I'm playing all the latest games, I'm playing The Last of Us Part 2 or playing Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, whatever it is, I always come home to certain games, right? Red Dead Redemption 2 being one, Destiny 2 being one, Division 2 is often one we come back to. Anthem would have been one, but, they took some wrong turns, and now we're sort of waiting to see what's next with them. So what I'm hoping is that Crystal Dynamics has sort of looked at, even though this isn't a looter shooter, hopefully they've looked at lots of games that are fitting into this genre of sort of an ongoing story that's being told, and this chase for gear, even though it's not necessarily guns that we're chasing here, but it is a gear chase. It's armor, it's abilities, it's skill points. It's playing. How do you make playing the same missions and exploring the same areas and adding new content over time, how do you make that last? Because we did have iterations of Destiny where when there wasn't a new DLC, I mean, the game was drop dead boring sometimes because you were like, I'm just out of content. I'm replaying the same strikes. It's the same Crucible PvP maps. It's just the same old, and then you just wait for the next one, and then you clear through the campaign, and then you do the new raid, and then you're like, yeah, I'm good, and then you just wait for the next thing to come out. And so Destiny and Division have kind of learned over time to sort of stretch out and space out and drip feed certain types of content and make sure that there's always at least something that you should be doing at some point in the game. Like, maybe it's seasonal content, maybe it's different story stuff that's going on, or a gear grind, or limited time events. But then they've even kind of dabbled with the devil on that, where it's like, not everybody has, 70 hours a week to invest, or hundreds of hours a week to invest into just one game to get all the gear and be the highest level and be the best. What about the weekend warriors? The people that got to work and can maybe only play a few games over the weekend, and they got to choose their time wisely, and they don't want to miss out on the gear chase and end up not having something that may be critical throughout a season. So I'm hoping that that's something that Crystal Dynamics is studying. It seems inherent through what I'm seeing in their footage and stuff and what they're talking about. And really, with these war tables, I hope they continue this sort of monthly thing, where maybe they break down the patch notes, and maybe they talk about what's happening in the world, and maybe answer questions, talk to the fans, see what the community's thinking about the game, get that feedback. Obviously sometimes you have to be, developers got to be the parent of the situation and say, well, you may want this, but you're not the game developer, and this is our game, and we understand how this works. But at the same time, you don't want to oversteer that like Anthem did, where Anthem said, we know more than you, we got this, and then they screwed it all up. And because they didn't listen to people, it was, once we tapped out, once we played through the campaign, we're like, well, that's it for Anthem. There's no meaningful grind for guns, no meaningful story content after that, no real reason to continue playing the game, and everybody dumped it like it was old news, and it's a shame because we were really excited for that game. And in the same way, we are almost cautiously excited for this one. And the store gameplay, this is on the helicarrier here, just looks gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And the Donald Blake sort of costume with the name tag looks really cool, and he's got like these big old hiking boots on or something. So Thor's over here, and this is where we finally, this is the first war table where they were like, you know what, let's just show him a character gameplay, let's quit drip feeding and just showing these ideal cutscenes and ideal gameplay circumstances. Let's show them real raw gameplay, because I'll be honest, this isn't perfect. Like, sometimes they miss combos, in the gameplay, and they get hit and they take hits, and a lot of times when they're showing trailers like this, they're usually perfect and so ideal, and they're usually on easy mode, and the character never takes a hit because it's almost scripted so much for it to be this perfect ideal form of gameplay. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you look at early Division developer footage, and you look at Assassin's Creed footage and stuff of how they're really good at scripting a gameplay narrative for these types of gameplay footage trailers. This is just raw. Maybe they had a plan where they want to go and what to do and what to attack and what combos and powers to show off, but ultimately it seemed like it was really up to this person holding the controller to showcase Thor in the best way possible. And so I sort of like this imperfect authenticity here. And the fact that they were willing to just show us a snippet of a mission here out of context, not to ruin or spoil anything for us here. I think that was a really good move. So I'm really excited. Crystal Dynamics, I hope that they keep this active communication with the community, because if you're doing a live service game, you're doing something that's going to expand over time. You have to communicate. We've learned it. I don't want to have to sit here for 5 or 10 years. I know this sounds like a rant, but we don't want to see you do what Destiny has already done for 5 or 10 years, you know, or 20 since 2014 to now. So it really hadn't been that long. But it's been several years. It's a roller coaster of good decisions, bad decisions, and it's, I've stuck with it all the way through, and somehow we've made it. But Division makes the same mistakes, and every looter shooter goes through that, and Anthem, seemed like it was going to learn from everybody else's mistakes, taking them into account, and then the down curve attacked, and Division has its high moments, and Destiny has its high moments. But then there's decisions or times where the community outreach was not strong, or they made moves that just felt like they weren't right. But yeah, that constant outreach, the community manager, if you don't have a Deej, right? We said, who's the Deej with Division 2 when we would sort of have something positive to say or something negative or critical to say. We wanted to be like, well, who's the Deej? Who do we talk to? Because we know Deej with Bungie. We know him. We know all the crew. We know Noseworthy. We know Luke Smith. We know all these guys, and we know who to talk to, and we know all the different places to file reports and all this sort of stuff, and reach out and thank the developers for a job well done. We do that stuff all the time. But Avengers is very much going to need its people that that we can go to with questions for support. If we're not understanding something, or if we want to speak frankly about something, or say something critical, but not be rude, not be disrespectful, but maybe offer suggestions and give the community a voice that the developers can listen to, right? So it's all good things. Yeah, they're gonna get into showing some more cool stuff here, so I'll let that keep playing. But yeah, the footage, absolutely beautiful. So yeah, community outreach, and we're seeing it even right now with Halo Infinite. The footage they've shown, the gameplay they've shown, gotta get out in front of that and get those first impressions out there. If leaks happen, you gotta get out in front of it and explain things and make sure that nothing gets out of hand, And so they've done a really good job at controlling their message here now. But ever since we first saw footage for this game, it dropped off the radar for a long time. We saw the A-Day footage at E3, and then for the longest time, nothing. And then they did the closed door footage that they didn't show to anyone, but some of that leaked eventually. There was like 30 minutes or more of the A-Day footage, and it was like filmed off of someone's phone or something, which was totally wrong, but kind of awesome that they did it, because it kind of sort of forced us all to get a chance to look at that. And then eventually they released their own proper footage of it, so we could see it, in all its glory at the proper frame rate and color specifications and stuff. So I mean, unexpected things like that happen. We don't like leaks, but things happen, and getting out in front of it is the right move. And so they've done a really good job at just showcasing things, and not trying to just hide everything. They're showing us the HUD, they're showing us the game unfiltered. They're not trying to just show us the shiny good parts, and none of the the down to earth real stuff of what it's going to feel like when we get our hands on the controller, right? Because that can be a very big disconnect. When we play Watch Dogs, we saw that vertical slice, and then it was totally different by the time we got our hands on the controller. And that's happened with a lot of games. And I feel that way even with Ghost of Tsushima. Don't even get me started. It's a beautiful game, but I still feel like there's even things there. So I'm all over the place with this video, but I want to make these very clear comparisons across the board, because there's so much we can learn and apply to this game. We can learn from what other developers have done right, what they've done wrong. I'm already seeing similarities with the menus of how the gear works, and the power and the numbers, and different defense stats and melee stats. You're seeing all these stats on screen. And it's like, yeah, that looks kind of like and the health bars on the enemies. you can't help but look at the melee rating, the range, defense, heroic rating, and these different skill trees and coming up with our custom build. That's just like in Destiny, where we used to look at our Warlock, we do Sunsinger, okay, the grenades, we'll do the self-res build, because we need that for the raid, because if everyone wipes, I can come back to life and walk over and res people, or I can stay alive and finish off the encounter and heal people, whatever, whoever's left. And so we're seeing the gear pieces, the resource management. It's not unusual for a live service game, and for something that's sort of, this new genre of these looter shooters that we're seeing all over the place. Uh, it's not wrong to compare these, because we can take what they've done and learn, build something better from that. And so this game looks really good, and everything I've read and the visuals I've seen, and like I said, it all comes down to this beta, and obviously we can't judge a game just on the beta, but that's when we'll start to get a feel of what the final, obviously it's not representative of the final product. All those disclaimers are in there, but it gives us a good idea, and then they learn from that beta, apply what they see in our gameplay footage, and all the statistics that they're gathering with, is Iron Man too powerful? Is he getting too many multi kills? Whatever it may be, is this ability being relied on too much more than others? What is it? What's going on? Are characters not playing as Black Widow enough? Are they not excited to be her? How do we make her? Destiny has had to make these moves about, why is no one using this super ability? Why is no one using this weapon? We need to give them reasons to want to do this or that or whatever. So adapting the game is so key to keeping things fresh, and always having new costumes, tie-ins with the comics, tie-ins with the movies, the TV shows, whatever it may be, taking advantage of all that. I mean, they have such a broad universe, and if they truly do have this, good partnership with Marvel on this game, they should be able to do so many great things. We should be able to collect so many emotes. Look at how many armor sets we have on Destiny now, after so many years of Destiny 1 and 2. All these different gauntlets we've collected over the years, cloaks, marks and bonds and stuff that we've collected. We have so many different looks and ornaments and skins for our weapons, for our characters. And just imagine where we'll be with Avengers 3 years from now. If the game, like they said, if there's like a 10-year plan with this game, where they're, creating content, still coming out with new costumes for these characters, new iterations, new stories for these characters, and this is still a compelling game to play on our current gen, our next gen consoles, on our PCs, on, whether it's on xCloud or Google Stadia in the future, any of that stuff, wherever we're able to play this game, on whatever platforms we're able to play it, crossplay or not, all these big questions, right? It's got to be a beautiful growing experience. So right now they're talking about AIM, and they're sort of showing off different customizations of characters and rebuilding the helicarrier. And this is where I sort of see how it compares to sort of it's the tower, it's the White House in Division 2, it's your ship in Warframe. You're coming back to this place, you're getting bounties, you're trading in materials for one thing or another to craft something. You're going back to your base to get bounties and missions and interact with characters and further the story and meet up with your team, hop in the Quinjet with your buddies, and go out and do missions together and explore the world and experience this story together. And it just looks so cool. It looks so fun. Okay, so brief pause there. And so we're looking at this footage, and we're seeing how the characters are traversing. We're seeing how combat is working, right? We're seeing how super abilities, sort of your ultimates, your your Hulkbuster armor, calling in a big thunderstorm of attacks and stuff like that. And they're showing off how co-op things can be chained together between how multiple characters can sort of team up and chain abilities together in order to weaken enemies and buff each other and stuff like that. It's really cool. And they're talking about also how you will have the looks and the gear of your characters if you go on a Warzone mission. And let's say you're playing solo, you got your Thor in there that let's say you're playing as Thor. So be your Thor with your build, and then who joins you on that mission? Well, it's AI versions of your Black Widow, your Iron Man. Maybe you had the black armor on Iron Man, and you had a big focus on melee combat for him or whatever. And you had the Hulkbuster suit armed as his ultimate ability, and you had Kamala Khan, and maybe she's wearing some street clothes outfit instead of her costume, and she's got her stretchy arms, and she's climbing around on street poles and grabbing enemies and throwing them around and kicking them, and extending these punches everywhere. And you're flying around as your version of Thor. So it's sort of like you're creating your own team, even in a solo sense. Just the fact that you're sculpting your own team and you're playing with your builds. And so when you're playing your Thor, you're like, oh, how is this gonna work when I'm playing a mission with my Iron Man? Maybe I need to go on my Iron Man and see what he's doing, because Thor has a lot of AoE attacks, but man, maybe Iron Man needs some lasers for some long distance range stuff. And since he can fly, maybe you should just fly around and do that. And then Thor can, throw the hammer, get up close, do some combos. Iron Man can cover him from the sky. Yeah, okay. So you start thinking about these things even as a solo player, which you know, uh, games like Destiny and Division, it can be difficult to be a solo player. Some of the activities might be too difficult, and and when you do have AI, I'm thinking maybe Left 4 Dead, Payday. The AI doesn't always have the best brains, and they're not really operating off your character's looks and your character's build. It's not your Hoxton. It's not your Dallas. Your whatever, John Wick. Your character that's got your build and your weapon choices and your play style injected into it. And so here's one of the sellers, and obviously we're seeing specialty items, resources, things that time out. This retailer resets in 14 hours. Buy this chess piece from this guy. You're gonna want that for your Iron Man, whatever it may be. The gear chase is there, and the rare loot is there, and the build is there, and the specific armor set, all that stuff is there. And so I think if they manage to chase the meaningful builds and gear, and along with telling an ongoing compelling story between all these characters, and they're able to continue doing this, it's going to be a game that we may enjoy for a long time. And that's great, because ultimately a lot of these games kind of have an expiration date, right? Like there's a time where you quit playing Destiny 1, now you play Destiny 2. But now we just play Destiny 2, and they just keep adding to it, and then they vault other content, put out new stuff. And so, Avengers can be that ongoing experience. We don't have to wait for a part 2. We don't have to wait for the sell by date to expire, or like with Halo, it's like we've had to just wait for a sequel every 5-10 years or whatever it is. Well, with Halo Infinite, it's allegedly going the same way, right? They want to tell an ongoing story. They want to keep adding to it. Same with the multiplayer. They want to keep adding and iterating on that. So they'll do that, and hopefully it'll be good and meaningful. And so now we're looking at some July footage here. Whether I plan for this video to be this long or not, I just feel like I have a lot of thoughts, and I want to really explain why I'm so hyped about this and why I'm so passionate. And I hope it's coming through, because I'm pulling from a lot of examples of what I want to happen, what I don't want to happen, and just sort of talking about. I'm excited to play as all the characters. At first, I was like, I just want to be Cap, but then obviously, Cap dies as we see in the early footage here, and then it's like, oh crap. Well, I really do. Thor was like one of my favorites in the movie Thor. Um, that was like one of my favorite Marvel movies for the longest time until Winter Soldier came out, and then that one's the best now, in my opinion. Um, Winter Soldier was just such a compelling sort of like Manchurian Candidate. Like it was more than just. It wasn't really a superhero movie. I remember pitching it to my uncle, who thought, "Why you watch these stupid Mickey Mouse cartoons? When are you gonna grow up?" And I was like, "Well, it's got Robert Redford, and it's basically a spy thriller. It's got espionage. It's got intrigue. It's got political stuff going on, and it gets into this sort of overarching look at America and freedom and security, and at what point do we sell our freedom for more security and protection, whatever it may be, and Cap being so star-spangled 1940s just doesn't understand this new world, but he knows that it's not the America that he knows, and he knows that we can be better. And so there's a lot to learn from that movie. And had some really good action scenes, and it wasn't some bright and cheery, easygoing comic book movie like some of the others have been. I really enjoyed that. But Thor, just it gave me that meaningful arc in Thor. Um, Seeing that he wasn't worthy to wield the hammer, he had been disrespectful, and he'd taken advantage of his position, and went after the Frost Giants when he shouldn't have, and almost started a war or whatever, and hammer was taken away, and he had to earn it back, and he got it back at just the right time, and then all his armor comes on, and boom, he starts, fighting the big boss at the end of the movie. So it was such a cool experience to me, and so I was like, ah, crap, I gotta be Thor in this game now, because like that's gonna be cool, because I like flying around, I like heroes with big red capes, Superman being my fave. So obviously Thor, absolutely incredible. And then one of my friends, couple of friends, are like, "Oh, I want to be Thor." And I was like, "Well, I could be Captain America." So now I get fascinated, or I mean, not Captain America. I'll be Iron Man, and so obviously fascinated with Iron Man, all these movies, all these comics and stuff, and interested in the character and how Robert Downey Jr. has played him. Interested to see Nolan North's take on the character as well, and how Crystal Dynamics has written this character is going to be uh, very interesting. So looking at that and being excited to play him, and then seeing Black Widow and how awesome she looks, and just trying to see like, oh man, I really kind of want the challenge of being the human here, trying to keep up with all these giants, and like some of her abilities look super fun. So like hopefully, I'll be satisfied playing as anyone. And then looking at Hulk, I'm like, man, I've never really liked playing Hulk games. I haven't really been super into the Hulk very much. I remember playing Incredible Hulk, which was or maybe it was just called Hulk, was the Eric Bana game that had stealth sequences where you had to play as Bruce Banner, and then you got to be Hulk. You got to rip the shirt and play as Hulk, and smash things. And I remember that, and I actually really liked that game. It had an interesting art style, and me being a stealth gamer, I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. And I was like, I was actually interested in the fact that they had Bruce Banner style gameplay, and they somehow made the alter ego work gameplay wise. So now they're showing the harm rooms, which are sort of these augmented virtual reality rooms, where you can go into little, yeah, virtual training modules. That's the word. Where you can go in as your heroes, and you can go in co-op or solo and play with your buddies, and sort of take on these challenges and test out your abilities, and the synergy of your characters. How well are you all working together? Are your builds complementing each other? Are we able to defeat these enemies in quick succession? are we able to handle these tougher enemies in different circumstances? And it just seems really fascinating, and I'm very excited to see that. And so then they start talking about the drop zones and how those are meant to be sort of quicker missions, whereas the war zones are meant to be, bigger, expansive. I would almost compare them to like strikes in Destiny. There's lots of enemies to defeat. Maybe there's bosses and big open worlds. Whereas the drop zones is like, hey man, I'm just jumping in. Maybe I only have time to just save a few people and do a thing and finish it off. I don't know what the timer's like on it. Maybe it's 10 minutes. You get in there and do that. And here's where they show traversal. Iron Man's flying. Hulk is just kind of leaping at tall bounds, and Kamala is swinging with her stretchy arms. And then, I was like, well, what about Black Widow? And then she gets out the grapple hook and starts swinging around. So, it sort of restored my confidence. I'm like, I hope Black Widow's not just walking on the ground doing front flips and stuff, trying to get to the location, while everyone else is just like, hey guys, wait for me. Don't defeat all the enemies before I get there. So I kind of wonder how Cap will traverse, and I'm just curious how all these characters and future characters, how is Hawkeye going to navigate the world? So yeah, and now they're talking more about the drop zones. They're talking about how these modes will be in the beta, and then how there's even other modes that they'll talk about at a later date, and obviously other heroes, and the fact that there's a campaign around Hawkeye, to sort of introduce him and tell a story and to make him significant. He's not just, okay, let's just copy and paste, throw in another character. Like, let's just throw him in without any, establishment to the lore and the world. No, of course they're coming in. They're saying, yeah, this is why Clint Barton's here. This is what he's after. This is Chase. This is why he's connected with the Avengers here. And so you're supposed to essentially, I guess, the post game stuff is to recruit more Avengers, to face the challenges ahead, right? And so that's always been sort of the thing with the Avengers, is that they're always, rotating heroes in and out, and facing different conflicts, and maybe they face a conflict and they're like, oh man, we really need Ant-Man for this one, or whatever it may be. So then they team up with this guy and get something going. Um, so there's been missions where they've needed scientists, and Tony Stark and Bruce Banner have had to team up and devise, scientific cool stuff and inventions to get things done, save the day, stop the bad guys. So everyone's, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some other characters show up over the course of the Avengers timeline here in the game. And so really just getting into that now, I sort of started talking to people on stream, and even thinking myself, well, what kind of Marvel characters do I want to see? Well, a lot of people brought up Wolverine and the X-Men. It's like, yeah, of course, we'd love to see that. That'd be great. I was thinking Punisher and Daredevil, even though they're not, they're kind of rogue characters, defenders, and Frank Castle doesn't really, he's not a fan of, he's very much his own team, and he likes to kill people. He doesn't really play by the rules, so he's kind of a dark and gritty character. And so I'd be interested if they ever tried to pull him into this world. I think it'd be really interesting. But I think my number one pick would be Doctor Strange. I want to see how a magic character fits in this world. Based on what they've shown us here with how Iron Man works, and how Thor works. Obviously having some sort of mythical abilities there, and the ability to control lightning and stuff. We just look at Doctor Strange and all his effects that he's had in movies and comics. All these beautiful things. He's manipulated time and creates portals, and maybe he could create a healing rift, or a barrier to take damage or something. I think that's my pick of who I think would be really interesting. and I would like them to dive into his lore and make him relevant in this world, and also maybe even have his costumes from the movies and comics and stuff, and connect in that way as well, because it is a beautiful representation of the character, as are pretty much all of these, are incredible looks at the character. And so it's really cool to theorize stuff like that, and it's going to be really interesting. Like with Hawkeye, I wasn't expecting their take on him to be as awesome as it was. I thought it was going to be the lame costume with the eyes and the silly, I don't know, horns or whatever. I don't know what the heck is going on. I always thought that was super lame, but that's just me. Even Green Arrow is in his lamest incarnations. He's very stereotypically Robin Hoodie. But then there's other interpretations like Year One and stuff like that, where he's darker and grittier, and he's got the hood, and he's on the abandoned island and whatnot. So we're seeing sort of this right now. They're showing it, this sort of darker version of Clint Barton, and from a comic run I'm actually not very familiar with, and now I'm like, man, I might have to pull this up. Might have to read it a little bit. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh my god, I'm chomping at the bit. Show me some gameplay. I was like, I got to see how this guy plays. How is a bow gonna work in the world that they've created here for Marvel's Avengers? How's Crystal Dynamics gonna do that? We've seen the bow work in the Tomb Raider games. We've seen Black Widow, sort of inherit a play style from Lara Croft and take it to the next level with her enhanced spy training, hit woman abilities. um, so yeah, we're seeing that the comics that they pulled Hawkeye from. My Life as a Weapon, being one that they seem heavily inspired by, and that apparently I'm just gonna have to probably pick up a couple issues and start reading through it. But they are explaining here that he has a reason in this world. He's part of the story. He's sort of got his own missions that will sort of explain him. And then the Avengers initiative comes about, right? So we're reassembling the Avengers. We're maybe discovering new people that weren't part initially of the Avengers. But you got your main ones. You got Cap. You got Iron Man. You got Thor. You got Black Widow. You got Kamala Khan. Hulk. And then you're adding Hawkeye, and then there's like these three other question marks, and it's like, well, who could those be? Could it be Spider-Man? Could it be Wolverine? Could it be Punisher, Daredevil, Doctor Strange? Who could it be? It could be anybody. Guardians of the Galaxy. What are your theories? So that's where I kind of start to sort of wrap things up here. Is I want to ask you, what are the characters you want to see? And of the characters you have seen, who are you going to play as first when you get your hands on the game? Are you going to be a Hulk player? Are you going to be all about Kamala Khan? Are you going to be on Black Widow? You got an Iron Man build in mind? Or do you just want to throw Thor's hammer around? What do you want to do? What's your team look like? Your ideal team? Is your friend going to be Cap while you're Iron Man? What's the dream team between you guys, gamers, and what characters would you like to see in the future? And I just want to get everyone's thoughts about this. I want to know if other people are passionate about this. If there's anything you want me to talk about or do a deeper dive or sort of research. Obviously we're gonna have the beta at the end of this week on Friday. I'm going to be trying to break things down as much as I can and enjoying the game and trying to try out the characters as much as I can. The beta is going to be running all month. Starts on the 7th for PS4, which, will eventually go to PS5 when that comes out. Then you have PC and Xbox on the 14th of August. And then on the 21st, for those of you that have not pre-ordered the game at all, that is when the open beta comes out. And any of you, regardless of whether you've pre-ordered the game, will be able to play the beta and check out the game and see like, is that something, maybe caught me off guard, might actually be interested in, or maybe I was really interested but just wanted to see, finally get some hands-on, get sort of a demo, get an idea of what this is, because, COVID-19, we're being very tight with our finances. We're not gonna, just go out and buy games left and right. So we need to be very informed when we're picking up stuff like this, right? Um, so yeah, there's a lot there. So yeah, as the end cap, tell me about your characters. Tell me what you're excited about in this game. In the comments, either here on YouTube, you can come in the Twitch stream, Aaron Shack 64 on Twitch, Aaron Shack 64 on Twitter. You can come in, have these conversations. We have a Discord as well. And of course, if you enjoy listening to the podcast, please support it. Let me know, write reviews, tell me what I can, I want your feedback. What can I improve here? We're just getting started. This is only episode 5, and this is a game that I'm really passionate about and really wanting to cover at length. I want this to kind of be a game that I can really hone in and focus and make a lot of content around. So we're going to have live streaming content where obviously I'm just sitting here just playing the game, experiencing the story, building our characters. But then at the same time, I'm probably going to want to, tear this down and be like, okay, this is my Iron Man build. Here's what I think. What do you guys? What's your build? Because here's mine. Here's how mine works. And then I'll make a separate video and be like, okay, this is my Thor. This is how he works. Maybe there's some suggestions of how he could be better, or maybe he's worse in some ways, whatever it may be. Or maybe I come up with some really unique build that wows somebody and says, wow, I want to try to get the same similar gear to what you have, and maybe get that same thing down. So I want to sort of do that deep dive and sort of, take what I've learned about the gaming industry and I think what I've learned in my community is that a lot of people will come by and they'll want to know my take on a game, or they'll want me to. I'm really good at breaking down and pretty much just selling you a game, right? Because I want you to play this game with me, right? And I want you guys, even if you're not playing it like actually physically with me, I want you to play the game and be a part of the community if you enjoy this sort of thing. And I want to be there to make sure that you're making the right choices. This is a game worth buying. Oftentimes I feel like when I'm streaming, when I'm creating content, I'm also selling you the game. I'm justifying the game. I'm explaining it in ways that you can understand and make an informed purchase. And I'm answering your questions, and I'm happy to do so. I'm never upset when people come in and they want to have discussions about the game and ask questions and get some knowledge, because that's a lot of what Twitch traffic is, and what probably even YouTube traffic is it's a lot of people that are just like, is this worth buying? Let me type in the search bar here and see what's worth doing. So yeah, as I begin to wrap things up, Doctor Strange being my main character, my out of reach characters that I'm like, don't know if they'll happen, but like if they do, holy crap, would be Daredevil and Punisher, especially Punisher. I think it'd be cool if he see him and Black Widow playing together. Like, that's the dream. The Punisher game from back in the day was really rad, and there was even a team up with Black Widow in that. And then there was one part where you went to Stark Industries and met up with Iron Man. And, obviously they don't get along. So it was fun. It was really cool stuff. So definitely a game to check out. I believe that was Xbox PS2 era game, that particular Punisher game, early 2000s, I believe. So yeah. What are you most excited about? What kind of build are you going for? Is there a certain look you want to have? Certain characters? Are you excited about Hawkeye? And of course, wanting to hear the theories of, what characters you want to see, or maybe what stories you want them to tell. Maybe you want them to tell Civil War. You want them, what famous Marvel stories do you want this to get into, or do you want to just go somewhere totally new and unfamiliar, with maybe just little odes to some of our big Marvel stories? So I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. I just really wanted to make a video that sort of explained my passion for this and why I'm so excited, and why I've pre-ordered I believe it's called the Digital Deluxe Edition with all the best skins, all the best things on both PS4 and PC. Um, because I know I'm gonna want to have all those skins. I know I'm gonna want to have all those things, and I'm just so excited. And I wanted to have even that extra 7 days. I told myself don't do it, stupid, and I still did it. And I totally justified. I was like, I gotta play this as soon as I can for as much as I can, and I think I'll enjoy playing it on the PS5. And when that time comes, and of course I'm gonna enjoy playing it on the PC, and turning up the specs as much as I can, and hopefully being able to play with a lot of different people, and hopefully being able to also explore the solo player abilities as well. So yeah, hopefully I've gotten across my passion for the game. We've had a couple other videos, and I'll link those in the description in case you want to check out any of the other content, the deep dives. But a lot of it was going over some of this footage that we've shown today and talked about in greater detail. So this is the Shackcast, my podcast, episode 5, covering Marvel's Avengers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to any of these podcasts or the YouTube channel, wherever you're consuming this content. Check me out on Twitch if you want to see it live. Aaron Shack 64 signing off. Take care.